Is drinking raw milk safe like RFK Jr. suggests? Can you reduce a glucose spike if you eat your food in, quote unquote, the right order? I'm registered dietitian Abby Sharp. I host a nutrition myth-busting podcast called Bite Back with Abby Sharp, and those are just some of the questions I tackle with qualified experts on my show. There is so much food misinformation and disinformation out there, and it can feel impossible to know what's real and what's BS. On Bite Back, my goal is to help listeners create a pleasurable relationship with food, their body, and themselves, which in my opinion is the fundamental secret to good health. Listen to Bite Back wherever you get your podcasts.
So I just want to make sure I have this straight. Our collective dreams as Canadians of having the Stanley Cup return to Canada are distant, right? They've been on hold for 30 plus years now and remain on hold a while longer. And your dreams of being named the most valuable player in a Stanley Cup final can be achieved simply by being the dirtiest player to ever play the game. Do I have it right now? That's what happened last night in the world of sports. Maybe you didn't get to stay up for it like some other old people, me. Because why do we start games at 8 o'clock? You want to grow the game? National Hockey League, start the games earlier so the kids can watch too. Although I'm sure some very generous parents said, yes, it's the Stanley Cup, and it will likely be awarded tonight. Stay up late and watch the game. Anyway, the dreams part was, of course, because that's the name of the song you just heard. It went number one on this day back in 1977 for, of course, Fleetwood Mac. Would you believe that it was their only number one hit, their first and only number one in the U.S., Fleetwood Mac's Dreams? Stevie Nicks famously said she wrote the song in about 10 minutes. We should all be so talented, Ms. Nicks. We should all be so talented. A number one for Fleetwood Mac on this day in 1977. This day is Wednesday, the 18th of June. Good morning. Welcome to the show. Thank you very much for stopping by and spending some of your valuable time with us. I got to spend some time late yesterday afternoon and into the evening with some fine folks. There were a lot of red jackets, a lot of red in the area I was hanging out yesterday because it was the banquet following the big golf tournament for Home Hardware, their suppliers, their partners. And this is something that Home Hardware does annually as an opportunity for team members to get out, socialize, the suppliers and partners to be thanked, etc. But, and here's the really cool part, they also add a charitable component to it. And so why was I there? Well, because we are very fortunate, the collective we within cystic fibrosis, that we are the charitable partner for this year and next. That's how Home Hardware does this. Every couple of years, they'll change that charitable partner so they can spread that love around. But the commitment to and investment in our community from Home Hardware, which is headquartered, as you know, in the beautiful community of St. Jacobs, right here in the region of Waterloo. They are committed to the community, and that was evident in spades at the golf tournament yesterday. We are very grateful for the support, and I will shout out specifically because he's a partner on our Kitchener Rangers broadcasts, Brad Swanson and his team at Swanson's Home Hardware and Building Center on Park Street in Kitchener. Thanks for the commitment to the community, and thanks especially for the commitment for this year and next to be towards Cystic Fibrosis Canada with your annual golf tournament. What a fun bunch of people. Tell you, if I ever learned to golf, I might have even more fun.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
Let's get to your Farwell Show 5 for this Wednesday morning. Number 1, a rash of vehicle break-ins has prompted a warning from regional police. The investigation into the thefts continues after 9 vehicles were broken into in Waterloo over a 3-week period. Cash, license plates, personal identification cards, and bank cards among the items stolen. Vehicle owners are reminded to park in a secure location where possible, lock vehicle doors, and ensure that valuables are not left in plain sight. Number 2, the site of the former Angie's Kitchen restaurant on Herb Street in Waterloo has been approved for development. Full details have not been revealed, but one tower appears as though it will be 25 stories in height. Waterloo Council has agreed to sell part of the land that it owns so the development can move forward, but Waterloo holds the right to buy it back if no tower is built. Number 3 on your Farwell Show 5 this morning, Cambridge Council has deferred a decision on how to deal with fireworks. A report before Council last night recommended Cambridge follow the lead of Kitchener and Waterloo and ban the sale of fireworks. But after discussing the issue, Council will wait until the city's new noise bylaw is in effect before making a decision on fireworks. We'll talk about it more on the show in about 20 minutes' time at 9:30 this morning. Number 4, Ontario Premier Doug Ford is furious that the suspects arrested in connection to the largest drug seizure in the history of Peel Region, including a man from Cambridge, have all but one now being released on bail just days after the bust.
Slap on the wrist. Okay, little Johnny, you go out there and deal more drugs. Why don't you give him more drugs? It's crazy. The system is broken. I will be all over the Prime Minister and the federal government, bail reform until these I don't even want to call them what I'm thinking right now. I better hold off. But these people that are terrorizing our neighborhoods and feeding drugs to our people, they need to change the criminal code. They need to change bail reform. I will be all over him until this gets done.
And number 5 on your Farwell Show 5 this morning, the Edmonton Oilers have Connor McDavid, they have Leon Draisaitl, and they still can't beat the Florida Panthers.
Rats rain down. Lord Stanley's staying in South Florida. Last year was greatness. This time it's historic. The Florida Panthers are back-to-back Stanley Cup champions.
5-1 win for Florida last night finished off Edmonton in 6 games. And that is your Farwell Show 5 for this Wednesday morning. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, the G7 wrapped up yesterday in Alberta. How would you rate the performance of Prime Minister Mark Carney? We'll have the conversation coming up on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. The G7 meetings wrapped up yesterday in Alberta, and directly from the Prime Minister's office, I will quote, "In an increasingly dangerous and divided world, cooperation with reliable partners is more important than ever. With G7 partners, Canada will build a new era of collaboration, one rooted in mutual support and resilient partnerships. Canada is ready to lead," says the Prime Minister's office. Tim Powers is the chair of Summa Strategies, managing director, Abacus Data, and a political columnist with the Hill Times, joins us to talk more about it. Tim, good morning.
Mike, you almost had me in tears with that patriotic verse this morning. Good morning.
Taken straight from the desk of the Prime Minister himself. I was welling up with emotion. Maybe that was just Edmonton losing the Stanley Cup last night. I don't know, Tim.
Do you want to get into that?
No, I do not.
Squish those guys, and I'm not opposed to that.
You and me both. Okay, let's talk. Is Canada ready to lead? Can we start there? Do you get the sense after this meeting that Canada is the country ready to lead?
I think that's where the Prime Minister would like to position Canada. If you look at this, Mike, this has been a very deliberate positioning exercise by Mark Carney to demonstrate his bona fides. If part of the electoral quotient that was at play when he was elected was that he would, be able to do better on the international stage than Justin Trudeau was doing in the latter years. And you can say he's made some progress there. I think he is demonstrating that certainly there is respect for him from international leaders, but there's a long way between turning Mark Carney's personal credibility into Canada's opportunity, but generally a good first step. The other two things I'd quickly say is, he's going to be graded on, a lot of what happens with the U.S., and he set himself up to be graded soon, because apparently in the next 30 days we may have some kind of trade agreement. Secondarily, the G7 is kind of becoming, as Andrew Coyne has described it, the Globe columnist, the G6 plus this other person who used to be in it but's not in it. So is that a good or a bad thing? I think it's too early to tell.
On that point, Tim, and the fact that there is a trade agreement perhaps imminent between Canada and the U.S., do you find that contradictory at all between what we heard during the election campaign and what we're now seeing?
Well, it's not a Kachuk elbow into the face of Connor McDavid. Sorry, Edmonton fans,
done.
happened again.
Well done.
It's definitely not that. But I think, and Carney did make a lot about having elbows up and being forceful. I think what you saw was a charm offensive. What you've seen with the U.S. president is a charm offensive, and that may be putting Canadians aback a little bit. But based on public opinion polls, Mike, the deviation from the election promise isn't hurting Mark Carney yet. He seems to be high in personal popularity. He's high. The party's high in support. Part of that's a honeymoon, of course. But yeah, this isn't elbows up. This is velvet gloves on.
Slight tangent, but I think connected to what we just witnessed at the G7, Tim, and that is this honeymoon period that you just allude to is filled with promises and is creating, I think, a great deal of expectation. And I wonder how you feel about the Prime Minister's ability to meet those expectations that he is arguably setting for himself.
Well, he's breaking every political rule that there is about keeping political expectations low and overcoming them and declaring victory. He doesn't seem encumbered by expectations. That's comes with its own set of risks. I mean, there's one coming through here in Ottawa right now, Bill C-5 to speed up resource development, as I know you no doubt have been covering. Well, that has a lot of popular support. There are different Indigenous groups and environmental groups that are pushing hard to derail that. If he gets that through, that may be a short-term win and an expectation achieved. But if he keeps, keeps raising the bar so that it is so high, at some point, the laws of gravity suggest it's going to come down. But he doesn't seem to be bothered by that right now.
And based on the popularity, Canadians are not yet bothered by it either. They seem to be behind this ambitious agenda.
Yeah, I think, the Prime Minister is fueled by the disdain a lot of Canadians and dislike they have for Donald Trump, broader economic concerns that they have, the fact that Carney, in terms of governance, is very different in approach than Justin Trudeau. In fact, I've said it, others have said it, so it's not, for me, it's certainly not novel, but he's governing like a bit of a progressive conservative. And maybe that's convinced Canadians for now that that's the kind of change they like at the moment. Got to be damn frustrating for the federal Conservatives because Mark Carney is appropriating parts of their agenda with the speed of the best kleptomaniac. I mean, he's taken tax breaks and brought that forward. He's taken, a greater positioning of Canada on national security, investment in defense, on housing policy. So he's going down a track right now that people like. How long can he keep going? We don't know that at this moment.
to that end, Tim, and how the federal Conservatives must be feeling in the wake of all of this, you're no stranger to lending your advice and guidance to Conservative government.
Nobody ever takes it, Mike, but what the hell,
Well,
right?
if they did, Tim, just imagine where the party would
God
be.
forbid.
But if you were to advise the federal Conservatives today, what might that nugget of advice sound like?
Well, you think you're setting me up for what I wrote in the Hill Times today, which is...
I may have.
You may have, thank you, which is review. Look, do a deep dive, a deep review of what happened during the election campaign. Don't be afraid to do that. You're calling on the Liberal government to be accountable, as you should be calling on them to be accountable. So be accountable yourselves. Show that you're a serious organization, because there is a threat of the Conservative Party looking like a bit of cult of personality around Pierre Poilievre. Look, to be fair to Poilievre, as the Hill Times has reported, he's calling candidates who are defeated. He's talking to other people. I know he is, and that's good. But that's like the coach reviewing his own team without maybe getting some outside experts in to say, hey, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? It doesn't need to be personal. It doesn't need to be about, taking X advisor to the woodshed or Y advisor to the woodshed. That's not helpful. But be more responsible. Canadians, I think, want to see that because we're in serious times. Thus why Carney, I think, is so appealing to the public at the moment.
Enjoyed your piece in the Hill Times today, Tim, and appreciate your time on the show. Thanks for being here.
And let's get it in one more time. Oilers suck. It's okay to cheer for the Panthers. Thanks, Mike.
Thank
Bye.
you, Tim. Bye-bye. And we'll leave him on that note. Oilers suck, says he. That's Alberta. We're in Ontario. We're upper Canadians, eh? Tim Powers, political columnist with the Hill Times, the chair of Summa Strategies, and managing director of Abacus Data, joins us to wrap the G7 and the progressive conservative that Mark Carney appears to be, at least operating as right now, Prime Minister. How do the federal Conservatives counter that anyway? This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Just ahead of our 9:30 update in the 570 News Center, the minute we begin this show every day, we open the phone lines real nice and wide so we can hear from you. It's the most interactive radio program anywhere in this region. Mary is with us early this morning. Good morning, Mary.
Good morning, Mike with a mic.
Mike with a mic.
I really liked what he said the last time, and Mary with a bike.
That's right. Gary Chalk is keeping his ears on you, Mary, on a bike.
Yes.
Yes.
Anyway, today, the 18th, is my husband's 85th birthday.
Happy birthday, hubby.
And it's also the Beatle guy, Paul McCartney's birthday today.
It is indeed. I believe McCartney's 83? Two? Okay, 82.
80. Yeah. Would you think I have any chance if I call him, he'd come and sing some songs for us?
Absolutely. Just give him a call, Mary. You probably have him on a speed dial, direct line somewhere.
Yeah. Okay, have a great day, Mike.
Thank you, Mary. You too. 85 years young is Mary's hubby. Love to hear it. I hope, sir, you have yourself a fantastic birthday. We have a very busy show today. And right after this update from the 570 News Center, we are going to dive into the conversation that Cambridge Council only wanted to take so far last night. A report before Cambridge Council offered up the recommendation that it, like Kitchener and Waterloo, enact a ban on the sale of fireworks, but Cambridge Council deferred. Let's talk about it on the show. We won't shy away from the conversation. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. The city of Cambridge, very much like cities across this province, are dealing with the problem that is fireworks. It seems as though in recent times we have gotten more than a little carried away with our use of the little pyrotechnics and have sometimes used them in dangerous ways. And that has led to, in cities like Kitchener and Waterloo, for example, an outright ban on the sale of fireworks beginning next year. You can still use fireworks on approved days in Kitchener and Waterloo, but you will not, starting in 2026, be able to buy them in the city. A report that Cambridge Council considered last night had the same recommendation to ban the sale of fireworks. However, Council deferred that decision. We're going to talk more about it, though, this morning with Ross Earnshaw, who's the Ward 4 councillor in Cambridge. Ross, good morning.
Morning, Mike. You've once again chosen an explosive topic for us to discuss.
Nothing but the explosive stuff on this show, Mr. Earnshaw. That is for sure. Well played. You were one of two councillors to vote against the deferral last evening. Why did you do that?
I didn't feel that the deferral was fair to some of the delegates who had registered to come and had not yet been heard from. And I didn't think that the deferral would necessarily add to the information that was available to us for the purposes of the decision. But that was not the majority view, and so the matter was deferred.
What is the problem that we're trying to solve here, Ross?
Well, our last fireworks bylaw, Mike, was 2004. It's been tinkered with and tweaked a few times since then. But since about 2015, according to what I've been able to determine, there has been a growing incidence of what you described in your opening remarks as misuse of fireworks. There's been an increasing number of complaints on each sort of fireworks occasion and from time to time through the year. And the use or misuse of these fireworks is endangering people and property. Some recent examples that I'm sure you're aware of, fireworks are used as a weapon. They're shot at people. They've been shot out of moving vehicles. They've been used in parks and on roadways and on sidewalks without license or permission. They damage private property. They constitute a fire hazard. And according to my email inbox, they cause distress to pets and those experiencing PTSD or auditory sensitivity. So the number of complaints has been increasing exponentially, was my word last night. And it's felt that something has to be done. So the other tweaks that were made were to reduce the inclement weather clause from 7 days down to 2 days back in 2017. And then more recently, during my tenure as a councillor in August of 2023, the inclement weather clause was removed. Fireworks were restricted to just Victoria Day, Canada Day, and Diwali. And a time frame was established to allow fireworks only between dusk and 11 p.m. on those three approved days. And these increasingly stringent measures have not resulted in a reduction in the misuse of fireworks. And so the whole region, as you indicated in your opening remarks, has been grappling with what to do about that.
I worry a little bit, Ross, about using complaints as a data point for restrictions or further change in regulation on the part of the city. Because last year, for example, 79 complaints. Is that a critical enough mass of complaints to warrant further regulation? And I wonder if that opens you up to more, if that sets the precedent. If there are 79 complaints on this, that, or the other issue, are you then bound to make some sort of regulatory change? Does that concern you?
Yeah, you make a good point, and the information that was available about the complaints during the course of the meeting last night was to the effect that the tracking of complaints is an inexact science. What I can only say for sure is that there is a trend of an increasing number of complaints, and that is the trend that we're trying to address. I know that the 79 complaints number was a number of what I would call official complaints that were lodged with the bylaw compliance people. But the mayor and others around the Horseshoe mentioned that we all get multiple email complaints. And so my anecdotal assessment based on my own inbox is that 79 is a pretty low number. But I agree with you that use of the complaint number that was in the report is not a strong basis on which to found a regulatory change. I think you have to look at it more as a trend, and the trend is obviously consistent and dramatically upward.
Why not just increase the amount of enforcement?
Well, there are... You always raise a question that leads me to talk about taxes, don't you? We have a bylaw compliance team that's lean and mean and efficient, but it's small. And we have a large city that's spread out all over the place, and enforcement of a bylaw like this is notoriously difficult. Essentially, in order to secure a conviction in the Provincial Offences Act court, you have to catch the people actually, the Latin phrase is in flagranti delicto, in red-handed. And that's very difficult to do because oftentimes a complaint is lodged. It's not contemporaneous with the event that's occurring. It's inexact as to the location. And even with a mobile unit, by the time bylaw officers can arrive, the scoundrels have, pardon the expression, disappeared into the darkness. And can't be apprehended. This past year, actually just this past couple months, we were successful, or the bylaw compliance team was successful in apprehending 4 individuals who had the temerity to steal some fireworks from a corner store location and didn't get any farther than the parking lot of the strip mall before they started firing them at people and each other. And they were so engaged when bylaw arrived. But of the 79 complaints that were officially lodged with bylaw last year, we learned last night there were no violations recorded. No one was apprehended.
So the deferral takes us to when, Ross? When will this come back to council for further consideration?
Best I can tell you right now is later this year. The deferral was as a result of a motion brought by Councillor Cooper, who noted that, speaking of the inexact nature of the bylaw complaint logging system, that some of the complaints and many of the comments that were in the appendices to our report that arose from the citizens' response to engagement through the website with the city and with the region were of the nature of noise. And our noise bylaw is also under review and will be coming forward, I believe, during the course of the summer for consideration. So Councillor Cooper noted that, or I presume he did. I didn't speak to him about the basis of his motion, but it seemed to me evident that he had noted the correlation between noise complaints and fireworks complaints and felt that the 2 bylaws ought to be considered in a coherent manner together. As I say, that bothered me because we had still about half a dozen registered delegates who had not yet been heard from, but that motion passed.
Ross, I always appreciate the time you give us on the show. Thanks very much for being here again.
It's always a pleasure, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Ross Earnshaw is the Ward 4 councillor in the city of Cambridge, joins us to talk about the deferral of that decision last night and really the nature of the problem we're trying to solve. John sent an email a couple of days ago. I promised him I would reference it this morning, knowing this conversation was coming up because I listened intently to Cambridge's council meeting last night. John's email to Mike at 570news.com reads as follows. Hi, Mike. I know this is slow in discussion response about banning fireworks sales in all surrounding areas, but with Canada Day coming up soon, I assumed that it would come up again. My overriding thought is this. I hate laws that try to idiot-proof our lives. I don't need to have things limited because of the few stupid things that a few stupid people do. That's why we have police. People rob banks, but do we make banks illegal? People get into car crashes, even causing deaths constantly. And do we make cars illegal? Should I go on? Unnecessary to go on, John. I hear you. And I've said this before. This is where I've landed. Truly, as I sit here, I cannot believe, of all the issues in all the councils that I've covered in all my life, I'll never forget the first council I covered in Salmon Arm, British Columbia, and the discussion was around a 3-way stop. And I couldn't believe there was so much interest in a 3-way stop. But the impact of a 3-way stop, I would argue, is far greater than the nuisance that is created by fireworks going pop, pop, pop at a time that you might not like them to be going pop, pop, pop. People that point them at other people and engage in those behaviors have been caught, charged, arrested, etc. As John says, that's what police are here for. I think we need to take a deep breath and remember that we are in a growing community. More people, more frustrations. Let's just extend some courtesy to our neighbors. Sometimes there'll be jack wagons, but we have to live with it, because that's, unless you want to go live on an island somewhere, that's also a choice. That's my take. You heard John's take. I'd love to hear yours. Give me a call on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
My anecdotal assessment based on my own inbox is that 79 is a pretty low number, is not a strong basis on which to found a regulatory change. I think you have to look at it more as a trend, and the trend is obviously consistent and dramatically upward.
That is Ross Earnshaw, Ward 4 councillor in Cambridge, talking to us about the fireworks discussion at Cambridge Council last evening, which has now been deferred until later in the year when council can bring it back as part of or after it looks at its updated noise bylaw. I get it. I don't know that 79 complaints is a high enough number, and I worry that if we're basing new rules and regulations around a number of complaints, I can find something that gets more than 79 complaints and doesn't get a change associated with it. So I worry a bit in that regard. And generally, if I'm honest, and I acknowledge I'm not the person that is bothered at all by fireworks. Yeah, it might wake me up. It might be like, why is somebody doing that at 11:30 at night? But then I just go back about my business. Our puppy does not love the fireworks, but she gets over it too. That's kind of where I'm at on it. But I'm always happy to hear from you at 519-570-2545. Star 570 and 1-800-570-5715. I don't think you're going to stop it with any amount of regulation, to be honest with you. The nuisance complaints. Walter, good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, I'm on the same card as you, Mike, when it comes to the fireworks. But, I was talking with my neighbor last night, and he takes his dog over, and he walks him or lets it play over the dog park. That got me thinking, let's have a fireworks park. We'll get these idiots that want to shoot, fireworks at each other, and we'll put them in a pen, and they can shoot them at each other all they want, with one caveat that any injuries is not covered by OHIP. You'll have to pay out of pocket.
I like it. Sign a waiver going into the pen, the fireworks pen. I like where you're going with this, Walter.
Yeah, and then we'll see how many people show up.
I kind of like this. I'm with you.
Yeah, I mean, like if they want to shoot them at each other, there's the perfect spot right there.
All right. You know what, Walter? I'm in. I'll sign your petition. I'll be the seconder of your motion. If you want to shoot fireworks at one another, here's your fireworks pen. Get in there and give her. But you have to sign a waiver first. Kevin, good morning.
Hi, good morning, Mike. Here is my take. I mean, I think the world has changed. I mean, fireworks is just something of a past, and I think it should be only one day a year for any country, and that's for the celebration of the birth or the liberation, or, think for that like a national celebration once a year, like 1st of July, 4th of July, or things like that. Other than that, it's just nothing but a dangerous act for the families to get, engaged to, or people should be illegal to be sold, and it should be managed by the city.
You think it's dangerous for families? Like, I remember my dad taking very good care of setting off fireworks in the backyard back in the day. We were fine.
Yeah, but remember, Mike, the world has changed. The fireworks that I'm 55 years old. It was different. Now there is all this kind of pyrotechnic kind of fireworks that, this crazy kind of a thing that you can buy online and use it against each other. It has changed years ago. When I was a kid, yes, my dad used to go and, put a firework, couple of banks there, and, it's all done. But unfortunately, the attitude of the people have changed. When I was a teenager, I wouldn't go take a firework. And I never heard anywhere in Canada that people were shooting fireworks at each other back in up to like 1990. This is a new trend, and people, they want to make a video of it and put it on a YouTube, put it on Instagram to get followers. I mean, the world has changed, so we have to change too. The policies and the bylaws have to change. We cannot live in 2025 and live with a bylaw of 1960. That's my take on it.
Okay, Kevin, fair take, and I appreciate it. You may not have heard that prior to 1990, people shooting fireworks at one another, and I never shot it at another person, but I confess to the little firecracker into either the pop can or the apple, just to see what would happen, or once you learned what would happen, to do it again, because it was kind of fun, because I was a dumb kid. But anyway, you'll shoot your eye out. It's always fun until somebody loses an eye. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. We have got a jam-packed show for you today that will include some fiery language from Ontario Premier Doug Ford, who is insistent that bail reform needs to happen, and maybe, just maybe, Canada needs to enact some sort of castle law like the United States, which means essentially that what you do in protection of or defense of your home, no matter the amount of force, is within your rights under the law. We'll talk about that during our Talkback Hour for sure, but the Premier was fired up yesterday when he kind of went off track during a news conference, so you'll hear that through the show today. In the next 30 minutes, though, a conversation with a local mom whose son has been missing for more than 20 years, and she desperately seeks closure, but she needs something in order to obtain that closure. So we will hear her story before 10:30 this morning. And after this update from the 570 News Center, it is our weekly conversation with the Blacklocks reporter, keeping their eyes on Ottawa's business. And what we're learning is the deficit is how much, and the people that helped with the ArriveCan app, and by helped, I mean helped themselves with government contracts, will never be able to get another government contract. We'll talk about that and more with the Blacklocks reporter next on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. The Blacklocks reporter is the only reporter-owned and operated newsroom that covers our nation's capital with neither politics nor punditry. And you can find their content online at blacklocks.ca. Well worth your time and subscription dollars because they cover our capital like no other. Tom Korski is the managing editor there, and he joins us every Wednesday morning at this time for a chat. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning, Mike.
It was a narrow vote, I'll grant you, but the contractors who made millions, and we do mean millions, off of the ArriveCan app will not make one shiny nickel more from our federal government, Tom.
It was really a naming and shaming, and that's exactly right. They were given a lifetime ban as federal contractors. Furthermore, the majority of MPs voted that the Department of Public Works and others should go to the ends of the earth to recover millions that were pocketed by these two contractors, and that any business that associates with them in the future should be also banned from federal contracting. It carries a lot of weight. It is a direction, but it's almost unprecedented. These are two sales reps. They both testified in committee under subpoena, just ordinary fellas, and they were managing partners of a two-man business operating out of a private home in Woodlawn, Ontario, north of Ottawa here. And they made out like nobody's business. On ArriveCan, their fees were $2.5 million. The Comptroller General counted over $100 million in contracts to this literally the smallest of small businesses, this two-man operation. Their fees were 20% off the top, and they were a broker. They didn't code anything. They had no factory. They didn't produce their own patented software. All they did was they knew just who to call in the Department of Public Works to get these sweetheart contracts. Unbelievable. Literally a class of COVID millionaires.
But you just said, I think, the magic words, Tom. They knew exactly who to call within the department. In fairness, and as much as I support this vote and this ban, Are we not scapegoating here? What about the accountability within our federal bureaucracy?
RCMP investigation is underway. Forgive my language. I want to tell you how sleazy this got. There was a senior manager at the Public Health Agency who was determined to have made the call that made these men millionaires on ArriveCan alone. And I'll tell you what happened. His name was Mindone, former Chief Information Officer. After this started to come out through access to information, we did a couple of requests. There were parliamentary committees who issued subpoenas. This guy went on paid sick leave. All of a sudden got very complicated. There was an access to information request for his emails with these contractors on a Thursday. And he went home on the weekend, and this was the official version, tried to change the batteries in my laptop, and I corrupted my entire database and destroyed all my communications. By the way, Mike, that's a felony under the Access to Information Act. That's how sharp these practices were. The RCMP investigation for fraudulent billing is ongoing, but MPs were fed up. And this is what happens when you don't have a judicial inquiry into federal contracting. It's this piecemeal kicking over rocks looking for the scams. These guys were classic.
Okay, let's move over to the federal housing ministry, Tom, where the former mayor of Vancouver is now that housing minister. And just so I'm clear here, Canada's new Minister for Housing, Gregor Robertson, has... look, it's a lot of money to me. I don't know if it's a fortune, but it's not bad change in his real estate portfolio, the housing minister.
$11 million, and that's the county tax assessor's valuation, so you know that's modest. $11 million in investment properties owned by Gregor Robertson, the housing minister. People say, well, you know, he's a capitalist, join the club. The problem was he was asked about that in committee. And he suddenly developed amnesia and said, you know, I don't want to talk about that. I really want to talk about these other. He was asked 6 times in committee by MPs, do you own investment property? And if so, when you talk about rents are too high, what rents do you charge and how does that work? None of this was disclosed under the Conflict of Interest Act in his public filings made so far with the Ethics Commissioner. And Robertson now has had to be shielded by Cabinet in question period. You know, we've had 6 housing ministers in 6 years. Gregor Robertson is one of them. Literally no one believes this man is going to solve the housing crisis. But this is one of the worst starts for any housing minister, is concealing your multi-million-dollar real estate portfolio.
A vote last night, Tom, will uphold the plan to ban the sale of gasoline-powered vehicles in this country by 2035. So 10 years from now, no more gas-guzzling automobiles for you. But even still, not without its critics is this upcoming ban.
Absolutely. Described as by opponents as costly, impractical, and draconian. Enforcement is a question, but you know why everyone's getting excited now? It's an incremental regulation. And it kicks in next year, and it states that automakers must prove that 20% of new pickup or passenger vehicle sales are electrics, or they will be penalized. 20% of new sales next year. We're nowhere close to that in Canada. The StatsCan has determined battery-powered electrics are about less than 1.5% of road vehicles. There's 27 million road vehicles in Canada, and only about 1/3 of a million are battery-powered electrics. It's a big problem, and that's why MPs are getting very exercised about this mandate.
Okay, one more I have to ask you about before I let you go, because I'm always fascinated by. No, I'm not fascinated. I'm bummed out, depressed by the deficit numbers. Tom, do we know? We're supposed to be getting another projection. What's the deficit here in Canada?
$50 billion this year, says the budget officer. He's taken a guess because Cabinet has not detailed any financial tables or presented a budget. It was $62 billion last year by official estimate. Could be $50 billion this year, $45 to $50 billion. How much money is that, Mike? Well, before pandemic times, the worst deficit anywhere, anytime in Canada was 2008 after the financial panic, $55 billion by then Finance Minister Jim Flaherty. People's hair was on fire. They were leaping out of windows. It was the end of time. And now $50 billion is like, it becomes normalized, really.
Can we add ish to the official government language? It's 50 billion ish. I like the ish, Tom.
That nails it. That's pretty much it.
As always, appreciate your time. We'll talk again next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Tom Korski, managing editor at the Blacklocks Reporter. I will encourage you again. Visit blacklocks.ca. It's the only reporter-owned and operated newsroom that covers our nation's capital, minding Ottawa's business every Wednesday morning at 10 with Tom Korski and the Blacklocks Reporter right here on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. David McDermott has been missing since November of 2002. You heard that correctly. More than 20 years now, the Kitchener man has been missing, and his family is continuing its search and holds out hope for some form of closure. And there is something that might help them in that regard, find the necessary closure, but they're having trouble getting that something. Linda Shaw is David McDermott's mother, joins the show to talk about it. Linda, good morning.
Good morning, Mike.
Can you describe in any way what these last almost 23 years have been like for you?
Well, nothing short of horrific, because in 23 years, you hear about remains being found, and you wonder if this is going to be the day. And trust me, there are a lot of remains that have been found over 23 years. It's awful.
One of the ways, and over 23 years, Linda, technology certainly advances, and one of the ways that you might be able to find remains, be they David's or anybody else's, quite frankly, is through the use of ground-penetrating radar. What is it that's preventing you from being able to use that technology?
That's a very good question. The police tell us they are working with the homeowner for them to allow the GPR on the back fenced area of the property. It's the one area that has not been checked, and we can't release our feelings that he would be there unless the GPR is done. I don't know why the homeowner is giving is not allowing it to be done. I don't understand it. It's non-invasive. It's just another hurdle we are trying to cross. If the person would allow it to be done, we never have to look at that property again, and we could move on. But we've done searches over the years, and we follow unidentified remains. I mean, it's crazy that we haven't gotten answered 23 years later.
What is it about this property on Mill Street in Kitchener that makes it the area that you are so interested in obtaining some closure for?
Well, that's where he was living. He had gone out to a bar with people that lived in the house that night to celebrate his friend's birthday. He got back to the house. We know that much. He was going to go that night, somewhere around 3 a.m., to go pick up his ball hockey equipment from a girlfriend that he had, but he never showed up. So over the years, we discovered just from neighbors that they know a fight occurred at the property, but because it was so late and dark, they had no idea who the fight involved. So it's the thing that hangs over our heads.
This property now today, 23 years later, is obviously owned by someone else. Have you had a chance to speak to that property owner yourself, Linda?
No, I've thought about doing just that. I do not know how the property owner would take it if I showed up at the door. I'm sure they have probably heard about the petition online. Really, I don't know if it would be a good thing or if it would be a negative outcome.
How many times over these past 23 years have you been hopeful that you were finally able to get an end to this story? Remains found, a clue that might be the breakthrough clue. Have there been times over these years that you've been hopeful?
Oh, absolutely. We have had tips that have been sent. There was one tip that was sent in the past year that apparently was given to the police that we were very hopeful for. But according to the police, everything is circumstantial. So I can't wrap my head around this. It's a nightmare.
It's a nightmare, and one that you continue to live 23 years later.
That's right. It's like, to say how many times have we been hopeful over 23 years? I don't know, 1,000 times.
Linda, I appreciate you making time for the show today, and I wish you luck getting this opportunity for this property to be searched and finally getting some closure on David's story. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much.
Linda Shaw is the mother of David McDermott, who went missing back in November of 2002. The property where he was last seen and that fight, or where he had been living and where that fight was alleged to have occurred in the overnight hours, is a property that Linda would love to see the use of ground-penetrating radar to determine whether or not there are remains in a section of the property. But the current owner says no. Linda has started a petition. You heard her allude to it. It's got more than 4,000 signatures at this point, but still no search that she believes is the next step. I would love to think that it provides the ultimate closure, but after 23 years, who knows? This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. I mentioned during the Farwell Show 5 today at the beginning of the show that regional police investigating a series of break-ins into vehicles, thefts from vehicles in Waterloo. About 9 of them over a 3-week span. And somewhat related, I also mentioned our premier here in Ontario, Doug Ford, pretty fired up about our criminal court system. He's demanding bail reform. And if you missed the story of an attempt to steal the premier's vehicle from the driveway of his home in Etobicoke, well, not many spin a yarn quite as well as Premier Ford.
Now, I'm going to tell you a story. Probably get in trouble for this. Do you want to hear about stupid criminals? Have you ever seen that show about stupid criminals out there? So 4 thugs come racing down my street, masks on, ready to take the car out of the driveway. Surprise, surprise, at 12:30, the 2 police cars are there. The chase is on. So they chase him. One guy runs out, takes off. They capture him, and they catch these other guys. Just imagine all the unfortunate people that don't have security there at their house with masks on, and they have all the tools ready to break in and everything, you know, and guess what's going to happen? They're going to be back out. Why don't you guys come over for a barbecue tonight? You know, I'll take care of you better than the police. And thank God the police got you and I never did. Anyways, that's my rant. I'm sick and tired of the weak justice system that we have. They have to get a backbone, and we need to start throwing these people in jail. This is turning into a lawless society. That's my rant, and that's it.
That's it. Why don't you come on over for a barbecue? This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio. I have been so looking forward to this next conversation because this is, I think it's okay to say now, we're friends, right, Della?
Absolutely.
Okay. Della Van Dockenberg and I are friends. We met at Block 3 Brewery it's not that kind of meeting. Della was there showing off her terrific sketches, the artwork that she does. And in fact, with what she has brought me today, she made sure that Block 3 was featured prominently, the sketch that she has done. I highly recommend her Instagram account, Random Sketches of My Life, and you'll find all of these wonderful sketches of these wonderful local places and more. So with all of that said, thanks for coming by. Nice to see you, friend.
Thank you for having me.
You have created something a little bit different. It's called Hop On It, the Great Ontario Brewery Adventure. What is it?
It is a game to help people explore breweries all over the province.
You got my attention.
Well, it started as a sketch project. I was attracted to breweries because they're so varied in their architecture. And as a sketch artist, I'm drawn to architecture, and breweries are in any kind of building you can imagine. So it's a great theme to center something on. So I started amassing all of these sketches of breweries, and last December I woke up one morning, I thought, what am I going to do with all of these sketches? And then I thought, I'm going to make a card game. So rather than putting in a book, I've done lots of books. So rather than putting them all in a book, I thought, let's make a game of it, and let's have people explore the province by visiting different breweries.
So how does the game work? How do we enjoy the experience in card game form?
Well, thank you for asking. There are many ways to play. The cards are set up geographically. So they're color-coded according to the region across the province. And so say you're spending a weekend in Toronto. Toronto cards are colored turquoise. So you take the turquoise subset and you take that with you and you go, okay, where are we going to go today? And you hold out your cards and you pick a card, and that's the one you're going to visit. So that's the simple way. There's other ways to play, like you set a time period, like a month or a season, and you and your friends decide you're going to visit as many breweries as you can during that period of time. You take a picture of the card while you're at the brewery, and you get together at the end of that time period, and you compare pictures, and you tally points according to how many breweries you visited over that period of time. If you're the designated driver, you get 2 points. And then you can add different types of variations on the theme by scoring points for the greatest number of varieties of beers you've tried, or the total number of kilometers you've driven. And the person with the most points at the end of the game wins.
I think it's fantastic. And this is timely, I think, as well, Della. Not only are we heading into the season where finally we can enjoy some patios, but it's the sort of thing we like to do, take in the local craft brew scene. And in particular now, given the tumultuous relationship with our neighbors to the south, maybe people are more inclined to travel closer to home.
For sure. I think the indications are a lot of people are going to be traveling in Canada. They want to explore local, and this is a great opportunity to explore local. And families can do this, right? Breweries are very family-friendly entities. They are community-oriented. Some places host disc golf. Some host trivia. Some have restaurants. And they have non-alcoholic alternatives available as well. So I think it's something that people can consider taking their kids along and exploring too, because it's a fun thing. And breweries are really fun places to visit.
How did you get started making random sketches of your life?
Completely randomly, of course. I just started sketching because I was tired of being on my phone. I've mentioned that before. I'm just tired of being on my phone. I need something else to do with my time. So I took a sketchbook with me and I just started sketching whatever I saw around me. And that made life more interesting. And I felt like I had something to show at the end of the day that was more than just, a Facebook post. So that's how it started. And I started posting my sketches online and it gained some traction, all kind of serendipitously.
You, though, did not begin life as an artist, right? Professionally, that is.
No, not at all. I studied criminal justice and sociology, and I started working for social services, and then we started a family, and I volunteered all over the place and just added all kinds of skills to my toolbox, and always loved being creative, always liked making things, and took up sketching in about 2018, and it's gone from there.
I'm a local boy. I born and raised in Kitchener, and I love the local landmarks that you've brought to life through your random sketches. And I know with this brewery tour, we're all over the province, but I wonder about the buildings and the character of the buildings and the landmarks that you found here in the region, and if there's anything about them, Della, that inspires you.
Absolutely. I love it. Everywhere I go, I see sketch fodder. I see buildings that have been around for a long time, and I think, we need to celebrate those things, and I celebrate them through my sketches. But I also see tired buildings and buildings that are no longer being used, and I think that's still great subject matter to sketch, and even new stuff too. I mean, in my sketches, in my Hop On It game, there will be breweries there that are in strip malls. There's an attraction to me for those as well.
It speaks right to my tastes as well, because we also enjoy the craft brewery scene. And you're right, they're such interesting places, welcoming spaces, and they've got some good beverages there too for, by the way, non-alcoholic beverages as well. So kids can enjoy some ginger ale or some root beer and things like that. Right? So where can people get their hands on Hop On It? Or I mentioned the Instagram handle, Random Sketches of Your Life. Or of my life, pardon me. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's mine.
It is yours, yes.
So there's a link on my bio on my Instagram page. There's also my website, it's a long one. It's dellavandokenburg.ca. So you can get it there. If you'd like to take a look at the game, there are 2 breweries in the region that are having sample packs for you to look at and play with. So one is at TWB and the other is at Rural Roots in Elmira.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay. So I will again point you, I think the easiest way, because I'm not going to try to spell out Van Dockenberg. No offense, Della. So just find on Instagram, Random Sketches of My Life. Are you surprised at the response to your sketch fodder that you described earlier?
It really amazes me that my sketches resonate with people and I get comments from people. It's really touching, and I'm amazed by it all. It's just been a wonderful journey.
We own several at home. We look forward to adding to the collection and love the work that you do. Thanks for stopping by today.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Della Van Dockenberg joins us on the show. The Hop On It Great Ontario Brewery Adventure is her latest adventure from Random Sketches of My Life. Check it out on Instagram. You'll find the link to her bio, right there, to get yourself the game and enjoy some local tourism this summer. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. I know the phrase has kind of fallen out of favor. Elbows up. Feel about it how you want to feel about it. But when all of this began, we began on this show. And by all of this, I mean the deterioration of the relationship between Canada and the United States. All this talk about stimulating the Canadian economy, breaking down interprovincial trade barriers. We've got municipalities now making commitments to more local procurement and so on and so forth. And we on this show have always been about local first, and we thought we would highlight how it is we go about getting stuff locally. And when we started doing that on this show, a couple of months back now, we received a number of messages. And I say this by way of apology, quite frankly, for taking as long as I've taken to get around to this. But I was told it doesn't get much more local than this place. You got it. If you want local, you should talk about this place. So let's talk about this place. The place being Bailey's Local Foods. Rob Puschelberg is the owner there and joins us for a conversation. Rob, good morning.
Good morning, Mike.
Are your elbows still up?
They're on my desk.
Perfect place for them. Tell me the story of Bailey's Local Foods, because I know it's not any sort of overnight discovery. You've been around for a long time, but how did this all get started for you?
For me, it got started during the pandemic. It was originally owned by Mary Rose Ivanko and Rachel Ward. And I had a delivery company that I did deliveries for the market. And about a year and a half ago, Mary Rose mentioned that she wanted to step away. She had other projects she was working on. And I took it over because I could see the value in what Bailey's offered, not only to people being able to get clean organic food, but also for a way for the local farmers and producers to be able to sell their products.
So what makes you at Bailey's Local Foods different from a farmer's market? Because you're still making that connection between the person that's buying from you and that farmer, that clean, fresh, organic food that you just talked about. What makes it different than a traditional farmer's market?
I think the fact that there's a lot more things available through our market. I think we have about 3,000 items available on our order sheet, and people can see ahead of time what it is they're going to order.
And one of the other things that strikes me as well, Rob, is that this is an online farmer's market. So we can browse through that selection you just talked about, place an order online, and then it gets delivered right to our door?
Yes, or picked up. So we run the market out of the First United Church in Waterloo at King and William. And the farmers and producers give us a list of what they have available. We upload it onto the order cycle. And the order cycle closes Thursday nights for a Monday market. So everyone orders what they would like. They choose whether they want to come and pick it up at the church or if they'd like to have it delivered. We deliver to Kitchener, Waterloo, and Stratford for $10. And then Thursday night, we place our orders with all of the farmers and producers. And Monday morning, they either drop everything off at the church, or we have a person that goes around with a van and a trailer to all the Mennonite farms and picks up from the Mennonite farms, brings it to the market. And then we have some people at the church that pack everyone's orders so that when people come to pick it up, it's all ready for them.
You mentioned earlier, Rob, when you decided to move into the position and take over operation of Bailey's Local Foods, that you saw the value in it. What value is it that you see in food offerings like this?
Well, a big portion of the food that's available through Bailey's is organic. And as someone who's been trying to find a way to eat like chemical-free food, for a lot of people, the only way they've been able to do it is to go from farm stand to farm stand to farm stand. And that's not really easy for everyone to do. This way, we have everything that is available locally all in one place.
Just to go back to how this all began in my introductory comments about the whole elbows up movement, and when we were talking on this show about how we personally go about shopping local, and so many people mentioned you got to check out Bailey's Local Foods. Have you seen or noticed any increase in demand for what you do in the last several months as, we've maybe turned our attention more to what's closer to home?
I think we've noticed having more new customers. This is we're just coming into the time where the market should pick up, because now we're starting to have fresh produce coming in. So during the winter months, it's really hard to say because there's not a lot of fresh produce available to really gauge how much of a difference it's made. But over the next month or so, I expect to be more able to judge that.
Where can people find you, Rob? Bailey'sLocalFoods.com. And again, you operate out of First United Church in Waterloo for people that want to pick up in person.
Correct. We also do have spontaneous shopping. So even if someone doesn't place an order, we do have a limited amount of things available at the market. A lot of times when we order, we have to order maybe a case or a set number of things, and it's not always spoken for. So that stuff is all made available for anyone that wants to come in. And it's a good way to just check it out and see what we're all about as well.
Rob, keep up the good work. And thanks very much for joining the show today.
Thanks for having me.
Rob Puschelberg is the owner of Bailey's Local Foods. As I was told, doesn't get much more local than that. Check it out, Bailey'sLocalFoods.com. We'll take a break. When we come back, there are collisions on our roads, sadly, all the time. But I'll bet that you've never heard this excuse for a collision on our roads. I'll tell you what happened. Those darn cicadas. That's coming up on the Mike Farwell Show. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Police in a suburb of Cincinnati were called to the scene of a crash where it was a single vehicle crash. Driver loses control, veers off the road, strikes a hydro pole, and then flips onto its side. Doesn't happen every day. The reason that it happened on this particular day, how does a driver, all by his lonesome, end up veering off the road, crashing into a pole, and flipping the car? Because of the cicada. That's right, the insect that flew into an open window. And while a cicada will not harm you personally, doesn't carry any diseases, it can be more than a little bit distracting. And in his efforts to swat away the cicada, the driver lost control of the vehicle and flipped it. According to police, as you can see, I'm quoting here, a cicada attack can be dangerous. Fortunately, no one was injured in this crash. The suspect fled the scene. In this case, the suspect would be that nasty cicada that caused the crash. I don't even want to get into what this guy's now going to have to go through with his insurance company. We're going to get you an update from the 570 News Center. And then who wants to talk about the only sporting hope we've got left in this country? Let's all hop on the Blue Jays bandwagon. Blue Jay Hunter joins us next on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
The Whiz Kids had won it, Bobby Thompson had done it, and Yogi read the comics all the while. Rock and roll was being born, marijuana we would scorn. So down on the corner the national pastime went on trial. We're talking baseball, Klazuski, Campanella, talking baseball. The man and Bobby Fella, the Scooter, the Barber and the Nuke. They knew them all from Boston to Dubuque, especially Willie, Mickey, and the Duke.
It is Wednesday morning, and Wednesday mornings at this time, our good friend Ian Hunter. He is the Blue Jay Hunter, and he joins us in studio to talk about Blue Jays baseball, with no disrespect intended to Devin Robertson, who had the 11 a.m. update for us from the 570 News Center. He says, if you want to feel that Canadian pride again because Edmonton got eliminated last night, don't worry about it because Canada Day is coming. We can have some fireworks. No, you want your Canadian pride. The Toronto Blue Jays, Blue Jay Hunter, are the last chance we have for sporting glory in this country this year.
I know, right? They're all of a sudden all eyeballs are on the Toronto Blue Jays, for better or worse, and we're getting right in kind of into the thick of baseball season, right? Like I think most people have, it's on their radar now. You know, hockey's wrapped up, basketball will soon be over, so all eyes on the Blue Jays.
I guess some Canadian team will win the Grey Cup in November, but I mean, there are only Canadian teams in that. So it's all Blue Jays all the time. And how about it? Bichette, Barger, back-to-back for a walk-off win for the Jays last night. Perfect timing.
That was an exciting game. I kind of had it. I was doing something off to the side. I had my eye on the game. I didn't expect them to come back, but it was still a fairly close game. But yeah, if you blinked, you might have missed it. If you turned away to watch the Oilers-Panthers game for about 2 or 3 minutes, you might have missed that. So a really impressive way to win, you know, back-to-back homers for a walk-off. I believe the Blue Jays did that last year too, late in the season. Joey Loperfido and also Addison Barger contributing there. So yeah, that was one that almost slipped away from the Blue Jays, but their MO this year is being the comeback kids, and yet another comeback win for the Blue Jays.
Top of the order getting it done. Vladdy, a 3-hit, 1 home run night last night himself.
Yeah, it's funny going into that game, there was a bit of a referendum, I guess, in the Blue Jays sphere about the lack of contributions from Vladdy over the last couple weeks. The Jays have been sailing, but that is... Vladdy and Bo had not been contributing very much. This was on the backs of Alejandro Kirk, Addison Barger, Ernie Clement, and lo and behold, you know, you get a big game from Vlad, 3 for 4, like you said, a homer, double, and Bo contributing as well. I believe he had a triple and a home run. So yeah, it just goes to show you that the guys at the top of the order, I think for this team, if they want to keep this rolling, those two guys need to contribute. I think it's a fun story every once in a while when you get a Jonathan Clausse or Ernie Clement with a game-winning hit, but they are not going to drive the bus on the offense. It's going to be the top 3 guys in the order. And when they're rolling, I think this team has a really good shot at winning games.
We were having some fun talking last week, Ian, about how fortunes had changed in just a couple of weeks' time. The Blue Jays riding a nice winning streak. They finished off a sweep of St. Louis just after we got off the air last week because it was a Wednesday afternoon game. But then, go into Philadelphia for the weekend and get the ever-loving hooey kicked out of you.
Yep.
And then maybe some fans will be, here we go, this and that. But what is it? The home cooking coming back for that win over Arizona last night. Disappointing weekend, but what a great win last night.
Yeah, it's if you look at their splits at home and on the road, Jays just seem to behave like a completely different team for whatever reason. The bats just seem to come alive when they're at the Dome there. So the funny thing is, even after that 3-game slide against the Phillies, the Jays are still only 3 back of the division lead right now from the Yankees, which is odd to hear. I know we're talking standings in mid-June, but it's still within reach. The Jays are still 2 games up on the Mariners for that final wild card spot. No team has really broken away in the American League, which is good news for Toronto because they've surged at the right time. And the one thing I am a little concerned about with this Jays team is their run differential, like runs scored minus runs allowed. They're a minus in run differential. They're the only team in baseball in a playoff spot with a negative run differential. So to me, that kind of indicates that things are going to even out a little bit. But I think in April, the bats were so incredibly cold. May, they came alive. And I think it's kind of evened out. What we've seen in June, I think, is really the true potential of this team. So if you take that and apply it forward for the rest of the season, I don't think they're a 90-win team. I think they might be somewhere in the 85 to 87-win realm, but that probably should be enough to get into a playoff spot.
I'm glad you said what you said about the bats, because I wondered what those splits were telling you with the negative run differential right now. And I thought back to, I remember one of our conversations when the bats were so cold. It's 4 runs in the past 5 games, which is not what you would have expected from this offense. So you look at it more as how cold the offense had been, as opposed to perhaps how poorly the pitching staff has performed.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, I don't want to harp on Anthony Santander, but he was, taking up a ton of at-bats in the top of the order. You're getting basically nothing from him. So you remove him from the lineup over the last little while, plug in basically Addison Barger, and you're getting plus offense out of him in key spots. So I think that's really one big reason why things have turned around, is just because you don't have a guy at the top of the order clogging up at bats with strikeouts, not getting on base. So that's one thing. And the other thing too is it's a more of a balanced lineup. Like basically opposing hitters say, well, okay, once we get through Vlad and Bo, it should be smooth sailing. But Kirk has contributed quite well. Ernie Clement, Jonathan Clase, Nathan Lucas prior to being put on the injured list. So it's a lot. You're getting contributions up and down the lineup, not just the guys at the top of the order.
And I certainly don't mean to be critical of a pitching staff that I think has performed well, except maybe for one member of the rotation who's now onto the injured list. So we'll talk about him. And the argument has been made, Blue Jay Hunter, that the Blue Jays have earned themselves the opportunity to have additions made at the trade deadline. So I'll get your thoughts on that too. And you're welcome to be a part of the Blue Jays conversation here with Blue Jay Hunter on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Ian Hunter is our colleague here at 570 News Radio and the Blue Jay Hunter. We're talking some Blue Jays baseball with Ian, as we do every Wednesday morning at this time. And you had the sense, Ian, earlier in our first segment, that the Blue Jays' home run numbers at home were pretty substantial. And it turns out your feeling is spot on.
Yeah, so in 36 games, 36 at home, 36 away. Jays have 48 homers at home, 25 on the road. Almost double the amount at home, which is funny because the last couple of years, Jays have actually, for power, their power numbers have not been great at Rogers Center. So it's nice to see that swing around. If you could just maybe boost that home run total a little bit more on the road, I think the record would be even that much better. But, that's up to David Popkins, the hitting coach, to figure that one out, I guess.
All right. You and I have been talking over the past couple of weeks here that Bowden Francis, we were talking about his struggles, bluntly, and he has now been placed on the 15-day injured list.
Yes. So I think leading up to that point, the Jays were kind of at a crossroads where, out in front, the manager was saying, yeah, we have his back. He's trying his best, but it just clearly was not working. So it turns out he's got a shoulder injury, and he's been nursing that his last 2 to 3 starts. So who knows if that probably had something to do with what was ailing him. But I think similar to the Anthony Santander thing, I think it's more of a reset. Like, send him down to the minor leagues. There's probably no need to rush him up. You've got Max Scherzer, who is actually on the recovery path. He has a rehab start in Buffalo tonight. And I think if all goes well, we may actually see him return to the Blue Jays next week, which is earlier in the season. I think I said, don't quote me on this, but I think I said, I'd be so shocked if we saw him before the All-Star break. Lo and behold, he's coming back. So that's one area of this club that really needs help, because they're kind of papering things together in the 4 and 5 spot. They've got Eric Lauer starting again today, but how sustainable is that? I don't think it is. I still think you need another starting pitcher. Even if Max Scherzer does come back and he is healthy, I still think you need one more guy, because counting on Bowden Francis to bounce back, I don't know if I see that this season. I feel like it's probably it's not a write-off for him, but I think this is going to be a bit of a step back in his development.
Eric Swanson, meantime, gets the dreaded DFA, designated for assignment.
Yeah, that was one move I was a little surprised to see. That was a trade a few years ago that was pretty polarizing. The Jays trading Teoscar Hernandez for Eric Swanson. He was incredible in his first year as a Blue Jay in 2013, but injuries derailed his season last year, and he just couldn't really seem to find it again. So with this bit of roster crunch, the Jays they had to let him go. Wouldn't be shocked to see him catch on with another team like, the Tampa Bay Rays. They always seem to pick up guys off of the heat. But yeah, he was. I forget what his ERA was. It's probably north of 10, and you can't be doing that in the major leagues.
You mentioned earlier that nobody is running away with the American League, so that's a good thing for the Toronto Blue Jays as they sit right now 3 games back of the New York Yankees. In third place, mind you, but Tampa just a half game ahead of the Jays. So really in the thick of things. And I've heard the argument made, Ian, and when I did, I thought I want to get Ian's perspective on this. But the argument was made that the Blue Jays, given their run, the surge, to use your word from earlier, have put themselves in a position that they deserve to have additions made at the trade deadline about a month from now. What do you think?
Yeah, I think they absolutely have to. You don't spend $500 million on Vladimir Guerrero Jr. earlier this season to just kind of wait and see. I think you absolutely need reinforcements. And it's funny because you look at, on the other side of the division, the Boston Red Sox, who just traded away their franchise third baseman, Rafael Devers. They're not that far behind the Blue Jays in the standings. And to me, that kind of indicates they're waving the white flag on the season when you trade away a guy like that. So for the Blue Jays, the only issue is it's going to be a seller's market this year. There's a lot of teams in the American League that are on the periphery of contention. There's not a ton of basement dwellers. So, you've got your Athletics, the Chicago White Sox, the Baltimore Orioles. They've been coming up as of late, so they may not necessarily be sellers. So there's probably only going to be a handful of teams that are going to be outright selling. So the Jays are going to be bidding against their rivals in the wild card standings, like the Rays, and the Yankees and whatnot. But I think they absolutely need to add. The only issue is there's not going to be a ton of sexy names on the market. It's not going to be like 2015 where they're getting Troy Tulowitzki and David Price. It's probably going to be like a mid-tier starting pitcher and maybe like a 7th inning reliever here or there. But I think any additions to this team are going to be welcome for sure.
When we were talking last week and the Blue Jays were in the midst of that winning streak, the sweep loss in Philadelphia notwithstanding, I'm pretty sure they've gained ground in the wild card standings. I think they were a game and a half ahead last week, and they're 2 games up now in the wild card.
Yeah, and they've so I think I was looking at their record over their last 30. They've been performing even with that sweep in Philly, they've still somehow gained ground on the Yankees. So not next week, but the following week, the Yankees roll into town for a 4-game series, and we talked about this last week, but I think that's absolutely huge. Like if the Jays split that with the Yankees, I think you're okay with that. But if they take 3 of 4 or 4 of 4 from the Yankees, all of a sudden they're nipping at their heels. So it's a huge series. The Jays coming up, like the Diamondbacks, they're under 500 right now, but you've got the White Sox rolling into town. I'm not saying that's an automatic sweep, but they should not have trouble scoring runs this weekend. But they are facing a lot of tough teams coming up in the schedule. So that's why you kind of have to make hay against these teams that are under 500 right now.
You are hunting our only hope, Ian. The Blue Jays are Canada's sports hope for the rest of the year.
Yeah, they are.
We love it. Keep our eyes on them. Thanks for being here again.
You're welcome.
Ian Hunter is the Blue Jay Hunter. He joins us every Wednesday morning, 11 o'clock on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Something we touched on during the show yesterday, the largest drug bust in the history of Peel region, just down the road, down the 401 west of us. Almost $5 million worth of drugs taken off the streets. 9 people arrested, including a man from Cambridge. And in the days after those arrests, all but one of the suspects is out on bail. As I mentioned, it caught our attention. We talked about it on the show yesterday. And Ontario Premier Doug Ford also finds himself frustrated with the system.
And guess what, guys? These weak-kneed judges, the biggest bust in Peel's history, guess where they are? They're back out on the street again. Bail. Except one person. Do you believe that? They actually get released on the largest drug bust in Peel's history. 500 kilos of cocaine that could ultimately kill people, and judges slap on the wrist. Okay, little Johnny, you go out there and deal more drugs. Why don't you give them more drugs? It's crazy. The system is broken. I will be all over the Prime Minister and the federal government have bail reform until these I don't even want to call them what I'm thinking right now. I better hold off. But these people that are terrorizing our neighborhoods and feeding drugs to our people, that's number one. They need to change the criminal code. They need to change bail reform. I will be all over him until this gets done.
Fiery Premier Ford, who went on a bit of a tangent at the end of a media availability yesterday. Something else that the Premier made reference to is the castle law in the United States, which essentially says if somebody invades your castle, your home, you have, under the law, the right to use as much force as is necessary to protect your property and your family within that abode. We'll get into that more during our Talkback Hour today because I'm curious how you feel about the idea. That's in 30 minutes' time. Right now, it's off to the 570 News Center for an update, and then Wednesday morning, 11:30, the R&D of political R&D joins us on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Wednesday morning at 11:30, we're joined by Rob Deutschman, initials RD, for some political R&D, helping us get behind that curtain, understand how and why decisions are made. And Rob often likes to choose a piece of music to start the show. And I'm a little concerned with the choice today. Does this mean that Rob and I are currently not friends? I'm not sure, but we'll find out. Good morning, Robert.
That's a given, but
it's a given that we're not? Okay.
Exactly.
All right. Fair enough. Adversarial, as always, we will be.
No, I can't. So, no, this, I picked this one because, originally we were going to talk about, I wanted to talk about the, drug strategy or lack of drug strategy and what's happened to RIDS and other stuff. But, the renoviction bylaw discussion at the City of Kitchener really caught my attention. I was just thinking now, when you ask that question, when one asks the question, why can't we be friends? It seems like in this situation, greed is probably, or money is the root of all evil with respect to this situation. When you have certain situations where renovictions, and we know the stories, we've seen the stories. I know you've interviewed people like on Trainer who have been going through this sort of situation and what's been happening. And so I thought this would be a good topic to have a discussion about. And I did hear your interview with Mayor Verbanovich as well. And so some things caught my attention or my thoughts that I wanted to share.
One of the things that for me especially, Rob, and it still has to come to full council, but at committee in Kitchener, it sounds like the council is interested in a renoviction bylaw. But the big thing for me, and it has been raised, is whether or not this is even the municipality's job to do.
Right. And I heard that line, in your lane, and I know you like this line, stay in your lane.
I love it.
But Mike, I mean, even a left-winger, right-winger centerman, you tell them what their lanes are, but they move around a lot too. So there's always a blurring of the lanes. And in municipal politics and in governance, there clearly is a blurring of the lanes with respect to responsibilities, because at the end of the day, people who are elected, whether it's federal, provincial, or municipal, their primary concern, the number one primary concern, is the safety of people in your community. You want to make sure things are done legally, but you want to make sure it's safe for people. And when you see situations where people are put in unsafe situations and you have the ability to do something to act on it, it's hard to say that's not in my lane. And if you can do something, you are going to try to do something. And this is one of those situations where a municipality has an opportunity to do something. And this is not a complicated thing. This is simply a municipality saying, hey, landlord, usually a corporate landlord, who wants to come and do a major renovation and you're going to evict people, just tell us, confirm for us that you are complying with your obligations under the Landlord-Tenant Act. Simple as that. I mean, the corporations know what they need to do. They know what's required of them. And so all the municipality is saying is it could be as simple as before we're issuing you a renovation permit, confirm for us that you've done what you need to do. And that's all they have to do. And corporations have the wherewithal and the people, et cetera, to do what needs to get done. I mean, the city of Kitchener passed what is being termed a demoviction bylaw. So now we're talking about a renoviction bylaw. I had an opportunity to, and so let's talk about lanes for a second. So what happens when people are reno-evicted? Okay, and that's been happening a lot. Well, sure, it's the provincial responsibility to staff and the landlord-tenant board, and we know that's not being staffed properly because we hear about how long cases are taking. It's the provincial responsibility to pass legislation with respect to the Landlord-Tenant Act. But, Michael, when people are reno-evicted, who's taking care of those people? Who's taking care of the homeless? Who's taking people that are now suffering from food insecurity, housing insecurity? It falls on municipalities.
Okay.
And at the region, for example, we're working on building affordable housing. We've made major donations to the food bank because all the reverberations, the outcome of all of those, the ripples from those things fall at the municipal steps. And so you can't say simply it's not in our lane. It's thrown into our lane and we have to deal with it.
Okay, I've been biting my tongue, but please allow me just this because I get frustrated. I agree with what you said initially, that whatever level you're elected at or whatever lane you're in, you're there to protect the people that you represent. Well, I'm here to tell you, Rob, there are 3 members of the sitting government in Ontario elected in our community. Jess Dixon, Brian Riddell, that guy in Kitchener-Conestoga. Where are they? Where are they showing the care? Because this is in their purview. And yes, the city it ends up assuming responsibility, but why? You talk about poverty, homelessness, ODSP, that's Ontario Disability Support Payments. The province has the power to do all of this, and the fact that these MPPs sit on their derrieres and allow this to happen under their noses. Rob, I'm very upset about that. I really am. And then when we blur the line, hang on, I'm almost done. I'm almost done. No, I won't relax because I'm upset. When we blur the lines like this, it just confuses people, and it's not the way democracy is supposed to work.
Okay, first off, that last line is not. It's not about democracy. Is people voting for people? This is
we voted for these MPPs,
right, Michael? So democracy says
they should do their jobs, Rob.
Vote them again, right? Exactly. So, Michael, when you go tonight, when you replay this, you've just made my argument for a reno-eviction bylaw. Because you've just pointed out that the province isn't doing what they need to do.
But why? But how many more things do you want the cities to do, Rob? You've been on regional council. You know the budget pressures.
Mike, I understand, but let's step back for a sec. Now you can't just throw out this is going to be expensive or this is going to be that or the other thing. We got to see the details. But we have an opportunity to do something that other municipalities are doing, and a lot of times what municipalities do, they learn from other places, so they're not always reinventing the wheel. And they can implement. Look at Hamilton's experience. The number of eviction applications is way down since they've implemented this. So the question then is, right, like you said, the province, and I just said that too. I said that the province is responsible for these areas, but they haven't taken the steps. And so as a municipal leader, and look, I ran provincially for issues like that. I raised the issues about provincial inaction in various areas and how it's falling upon the municipalities. It was one of the biggest reasons why I ran, was to try and, to advocate for more dollars coming from the province instead of them spending it on special pet projects, to bring it down to the municipalities so we could deal with some of these issues. And at the same time, work on inaction at the provincial level. But that aside, the municipalities have the opportunity to do something here, and it's not that complicated to do. And Hamilton is a great example of what they've done. They've done it in British Columbia. And, for example, in, I think it was New Westminster, where they implemented, once the province did and took the steps that were needed to be taken, New Westminster repealed the bylaw. So you can change things municipally, but right now, we need to act, and we need to act. You see it, you hear the stories, and this is not. I saw the reference to democracy in a statement. That is not what this is about. This is not about democracy. There's no impact on democracy. This is about levels of government recognizing that another level may not be doing everything that they should be doing. I'm being polite, but recognizing that we have the opportunity to enact legislation, a bylaw that assists in the safety and security of people in our community, and we have that ability to do that. Just standing aside and advocating to leave it with the province, that's not ensuring safety of the community when you have that opportunity to do that.
All right. As you know, Rob, we have to take a quick commercial break. I'll let you think about this during the break, because I'm honestly angry, and this is, but because how many more things, Rob? How many more things can a municipality possibly be expected to do with the lack of funding that comes down from the province and the federal government? So think on that for a moment as we take a break. Political R&D continues. I'm holding your feet to the fire. Jess Dixon, Brian Riddell, and the MPP for Kitchener-Conestoga. This is your job, and you're not doing it so the city is picking up your slack. Not cool. Political R&D continues on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Wednesday mornings, 11:30, the former mayor of North Dumfries, former regional councillor and provincial candidate, Rob Deutschmann, joins us on the show for some political R&D. I took a breath, Rob. So I'm really excited about it. So I'll be a little more measured because
two things. First of all, apparently my law firm is sponsoring this hour. So
well, that's a good thing. It wasn't intentional, but okay. Yeah.
And second, yes. I just heard it says fighting for you so you don't have to. So Mike, you're taking up the mantle on behalf of the tenants. But it's great.
I am trying to, legitimately, because you're right about those stories and they break my heart. And it's awful when these unscrupulous landlords, be they corporate or personal, act in this way. So I'll try to put it this way. And I recognize you attract more flies with honey. I'm a big believer in that. But if you have a kid, Rob, and you keep doing everything for that kid, then the kid never learns how to do it for themselves. And in this case, it's the parent, the province. Well, the cities are going to pick up our slack anyway. So we're not forcing the province to do its job here. And I'm frustrated by that. I really am, because cities have taken up so much. And you know this. I know you know this.
Well, yeah, we all know it. And you've had, for example, Councillor Doug Craig on to talk about different funding models. You had, we had the recent motion that Nicholas Hermeta brought forward at Cambridge to talk about new funding models to allow the municipalities to be able to do more things, because who knows better what a municipality, city, town, village needs than the people who are at that level interacting day to day, whether it's at the arena or the supermarket or the farmer's market or just walking along the streets. That's who knows what areas need. Provincial-wide programs that are supposed to be applied similarly to 444 municipalities across the province just doesn't make sense. And so, yeah, absolutely, I agree with what you're talking about, that we need more funding. But until that happens, though, Mike, 6 of the councillors anyway for the city of Kitchener were not prepared to stand on the sidelines and wait for those changes to happen when they haven't happened. And a lot of this goes back to, and I appreciate, look, we just had an election. 2 of the parties talked about better funding models for the municipalities. One of them didn't. We had an election that got trumped, basically, right? There was one topic that blew over everything else. And, we didn't get policy platforms until late. They weren't, costed, et cetera. It was a quick election. So, if you want to talk about impact on democracy, that's an impact on democracy when you don't have an opportunity to be a better informed voter in an election. And, of course, we had Mother Nature certainly didn't help with that election. It was cold as what's the opposite of Hades? But anyway. So really what we're talking about, though, is when people say this is not democracy, really the question is, what is your area of responsibility? Federally, provincially, municipally, what is your area of responsibility? And yeah, one can easily say this is not our area of responsibility. But as I said, when the basic question is, what can I do? What is within our means to do to ensure that people in our community are safe? This is within the means. Now, your question is, how many things do we do? How far afield do we go? How many other areas are we going to cover? Michael, the answer to that is we have to take them one step at a time. We have to examine each individual issue that arises and decide whether that's something we want to take on or not.
I'm yet to find the one we won't take on, though, Rob.
Well,
and it doesn't take a genius. It doesn't take a genius. Even I can figure out. I can see the end of this road, and it ends poorly for cities. I'm not going to take another 10% tax increase.
Wait till budget time comes.
Exactly.
5%. Okay. How about this? What if there was a candidate that said we will not increase the budget beyond the rate of inflation?
Well, that's what the city of Kitchener has successfully done for, I think, the last 8 to 10 years.
Right, but every area, every region, every level has different areas and responsibilities. Social services is a huge cost. Transit is a huge cost. Policing is a huge cost. Those aren't always, those are covered at one level. There's different responsibilities at a lower level. But if you had that, you would have cuts everywhere that would probably likely occur. So is that what we want to see? That's the difficulty that we have.
Well, I struggle. I think it's a little bit of a false premise there, because I think we should be able to continue maintaining services at the rate of inflation. Thank you very much. Why should it cost us more?
Okay, fair enough. So I don't disagree with what you're saying.
Okay.
Whether it can actually happen is a whole nother question. And I can tell you, we've sat there trying to look at the last regional budget we just went through. We tried to get it down to 8% or something when we got to 9%. You can only, for whatever reason, you can only go so far.
9.6. 9.6.
Yeah, 9.6.
So that's 10.
Wait till the 5%. Wait till the 5% attempt happens. This is going to be an interesting conversation in the community, and that I don't even know if that's including police or not. So,
but what if the cuts came from all the stuff we're doing for the province? Let's show the province the money.
It could.
Yeah,
absolutely, it could, but it depends on what the desire of the elected officials are. When you're elected and you now have this power to pass laws to assist your fellow citizens, your fellow neighbors, friends, family, well, not family, but friends, neighbors, then you take those steps when you can. If it's family, of course, you probably have a conflict, and so you couldn't participate. Interestingly, 2 councillors couldn't participate in the vote on the rent eviction bylaw. But you're going to be hard pressed not to take those steps if it's within your means and power. Especially when you say, well, we say 9%. What does that mean overall? A few $100s a year, and then some people will say, well, that's a cup of coffee a day. Blah blah blah. So those are the sorts of conversations that go on, and it's going to be each individual's perspective, left, right, center of the political spectrum as well. And there's so many different things that get thrown into the mix that these decisions are difficult, and it's hard to turn your back on someone who is now going to be potentially homeless or couch surfing or what have you. It's tragic. It's a tragedy that's going on every day in our community right now.
And this is the thing, Rob. It ties in nicely to the final point I wanted to make, because your point earlier about a blanket policy that applies to 444 municipalities is very well taken. But in this case, when this is impacting so many of those 444 municipalities, it seems pretty easy to me that a provincial policy works here and is in order.
Well, Michael, they say in democracy, you get the government you vote for.
Yep.
So the majority, and he got a majority. So I guess the majority of the people want to see rent evictions occur.
Well, but it was never brought up as an issue, right? To your point earlier, too, about the short campaign, the lousy weather, no platforms.
I know, but we're never going to talk about every issue in a campaign. So you say, okay, this person is this way. I think this person is maybe a successful businessman, allegedly. So he sounds like he has common sense. So, yeah, let's go with this person to make the decisions of the day on issues that come up. But That's the thing, right? I mean, look at what's happening. Look at 6 years of what we've had in this province. You look around, Michael. If there's something you say is a good and a positive, I'd like to hear about it.
A good and a positive in this province?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to think on that.
Yeah, you think we'll talk about you? We can bring it up next week.
And next week, do me a favor, okay?
Right.
Don't call me Michael so often. Why can't we be friends, Rob? Why can't we be friends?
Michael's my term of endearment.
Oh, I know. Yeah. Enjoy the rest of your day, sir. Looking forward to next week.
Okay, see you, Mike. All the best.
Bye-bye. Rob Deutschman. He's the R&D in political R&D. Look, I'm sorry to say that I am I'm trying to think of. I mean, I kind of like beer in corner stores, but that's not a big deal. You know, I think we should have looser rules around that stuff, be treated like adults more. I'm not necessarily that guy that thinks the province of Ontario has gone to HE double hockey sticks in a handbasket just because Doug Ford became premier. But Rob did catch me there, and I'm on the spot. I'm going to keep thinking about, what's better. Sure as hell ain't the roads. Anyway, we'll think on that a little bit more. And I'm good. I'm not letting this one, though. I am dog, and the bone is a renoviction. This is the province's job. And your MPPs, 3 of which in this community are conservative with the sitting government, they got a majority. They are failing you in this regard. They are absolutely failing you. So good on the cities for trying to pick up the slack here. But how many more things? How many more? Our cities are already bending under the financial pressures. The province needs to do its job. Talk to your MPPs who are members of this current government and let them know you're not doing your job. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. I didn't expect to get that fired up during that conversation with Rob Deutschman, but I really am. I love my city. I think our municipal councillors, all 59 of them, don't even get me started on that, but do a pretty damn fine job. And they're trying to look out for people in their community. But how many more things are we as municipalities going to take on as responsibility? Because eventually we won't just bend, we're going to break. Anyway, the piggy bank is breaking. We had a fiery Premier Ford yesterday, almost as fiery as me in this past 30 minutes. He kind of went off on a bit of a tangent at the end of a news conference, and he brought up the Castle law. And I'd love to get your thoughts on that when we start Talkback next on the Mike Farwell Show. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Take out the papers and the trash, or you don't get no spending cash. If you don't scrub that kitchen floor, you ain't gonna rock and roll no more. Yakety yak.
Don't talk back.
Just finish cleaning up your room. See that dust fly with that broom. Get all that garbage outside, or you don't go out Friday night. Yakety yak.
Don't talk back.
Oh, please do. Don't make me beg, okay? Just talk back. 519-570-2545. Star 570. 1-800-570-5715. An open line hour we provide you each and every day to talk back. George, start us off. Good afternoon.
Yeah, Mike, I want to talk back.
Please do.
Okay, when do you have the chief back on next? I know there's a holiday coming July. What's the official date for the chief?
That's a good point by you, sir. And as I pull up my calendar here, it's going to be July the 8th.
Perfect. Here's what I want to ask, though. If I'm at home and I have intruders coming in and I want to protect myself, not with a firearm, but if I protect myself with a air gun, pellet, BB gun, and I do shoot them, would I be charged?
George, thank you for that question. I appreciate it. It was also asked of the chief the last time he was here. And his response, now I can't remember all of it, and I'll go back and find the audio, okay? But bottom line was, it was encouraged that we not get involved in such a confrontation and thus not put ourselves in harm's way. I know the question was asked deliberately because the laws here you see, are a little different than they are over there in the United States. George sets up perfectly. Why? Because when I heard Ontario Premier Doug Ford mention this yesterday, I thought back to the call we got during the last visit by Regional Police Chief Mark Kroll. I have an elderly mother who lives on her own. If her house is broken into and I'm there to prevent the people from stealing something or harming my mother, what within the law am I able to do? I believe the answer is very little. Let me take you on a little journey through an interesting media conference with Ontario Premier Doug Ford yesterday. It began with this tangent anyway, with his description of his vehicle almost being stolen right out of the driveway of his home.
Now, I'm going to tell you a story. Probably get in trouble for this. Do you want to hear about stupid criminals? Have you ever seen that show about stupid criminals out there? So 4 thugs come racing down my street, masks on, ready to take the car out of the driveway. Surprise, surprise, at 12:30, the 2 police cars are there. The chase is on. So they chase him. One guy runs out, takes off. They capture him, and they catch these other guys. But just imagine all the unfortunate people that don't have security there at their house with masks on, and they had all the tools ready to break in and everything, and guess what's going to happen? They're going to be back out. Why don't you guys come over for a barbecue tonight? I'll take care of you better than the police, and thank God the police got you, and I never did. Anyways, that's my rant. I'm sick and tired of the weak justice system that we have. They have to get a backbone, and we need to start throwing these people in jail. This is turning into a lawless society. That's my rant, and that's it.
Okay, but that wasn't everything that Ontario Premier Doug Ford had to say at this media conference yesterday. He was also upset by the largest drug bust in the history of the region of Peel that led to 9 arrests, one of them being a man from Cambridge, and 8 of those 9 people are now already out on bail.
And guess what, guys? These weak-kneed judges, the biggest bust in Peel's history, guess where they are? They're back out on the street again. Bail. Except one person. Do you believe that? They actually get released on the largest drug bust in Peel's history. 500 kilos of cocaine that could ultimately kill people, and judges slap on the wrist. Okay, little Johnny, you go out there and deal more drugs. Why don't you give them more drugs? It's crazy. The system is broken. I will be all over the Prime Minister and the federal government have bail reform until these I don't even want to call them what I'm thinking right now. I better hold off. But these people that are terrorizing our neighborhoods and feeding drugs to our people, that's number one. They need to change the criminal code. They need to change bail reform. I will be all over him until this gets done.
Change the criminal code, which brings us around to the question that George just asked, which was asked of our police chief when he was last here for Ask the Chief on the show. What about changing the criminal code to make an amendment that allowed for something like the castle law in the United States? Ontario Premier Doug Ford got into that on his tangent yesterday as well.
Did you hear about the guy that these thugs came up, ready to steal his car? They're all in their masks and everything. So I guess he was a hunter or something. He shot up in the air. I don't recommend that, by the way. But he gets charged. I got to find out this guy's name and number, and I'm going to hold a fundraiser for lawyer fees for him. He should get a medal for standing up. It's like down in the U.S., we should have the castle law. Someone breaks into your house, and I know any of these people here, someone breaks into your house, and they're coming after your kids, and you're coming after your spouse, you're going to fight like you've never fought before. You're going to use anything that you have, be it weapons, baseball bats, knives. You're protecting your family. These thugs shouldn't be coming in there.
Ontario Premier Doug Ford talking about the castle law, which in the United States is a legal principle that allows individuals to use force, even potentially deadly force, to defend themselves or their property against an intruder in their home or other legally occupied space. Would you want such a law in this country? Let's talk about that, because it was brought up when Regional Police Chief Mark Crowell was last year. George alluded to it with his question to start Talkback today. Premier Ford said as much at a media conference yesterday. We need a castle law, just like in the United States. What say you? Let me know on the Mike Farwell Show. It's Talkback, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. The legal right to use force, potentially even deadly force, to defend yourself or your property against an intruder. That's the castle law in the United States. Ontario Premier Doug Ford says we need a castle law here in Canada. What do you think? We'll go to the phones. Gary, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mike. How are you, buddy?
Good, thank you.
I'm telling you, listening to Doug Ford, I love it. Like, for him talking like that and saying like that, he means business. And I totally agree with him. I think that, we should have it. When I leave to go to work at night and my, fiance and the daughter's home, yes, we have cameras and stuff, but, I always worry because you hear these stories and, why not be able to protect ourselves like they do in the States?
All right, Gary, appreciate that call and thought. Listen, I know that my beloved gets a little bit nervous. I travel, share a fair bit for work, my share for work. I'm not overly concerned. I don't think anything like this is imminent, but we have heard the calls straight from the Premier's mouth. Zafari, what do you think?
Hello, Mike.
Hi, Zafari.
Hello, how are you doing?
Zafari, it's your turn to talk.
Can you talk, Mike?
Okay, Zafari's having some trouble. I'm going to go to Kyle next. Kyle, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I am with some of these people that say that we should have a right to defend ourselves. I mean, you look at some of these news that are outlets that are saying, something like in Toronto, it took me 20 minutes to get through to 911. I don't have time to wait 20 minutes to get a hold of an operator where somebody's trying to tie me up and steal things or break into my house and try to take my property. I mean, I don't have time to be waiting on an operator to tell me, what's the next step or to do and stuff like that, right? So, I'm not saying, pull out a gun and shoot the guy, but, like maybe a hockey stick or something just to help, kind of, get the guy away. But, I'm kind of mixed on it. I understand where Doug Ford is coming from. But the first place you got to start with is the laws that are in place and the bail reform and letting these guys out on bail so early, whether they have one offense or 5 offenses. That's where you got to start. And then maybe we could start talking about, the right to defend yourself. But that's just my take on it there, Mike. So thanks a lot, my friend.
All right, Kyle, appreciate it. A hockey stick as opposed to a baseball bat. How very Canadian of you. And Premier Ford was alluding to the individual in the Toronto area that fired a shot into the air. And we get it. We understand laws, especially our responsible and legal firearms owners know discharging a firearm like that is an offense. But it becomes difficult in these situations to understand how the people that were there in the man's driveway attempting to steal his car end up with less of a consequence than the individual who fires the shot into the air. Gary, good afternoon.
Hey, Mike. I'm not sure if I got cut off or what, but while I was talking, all of a sudden it ended, the phone call. So
you were saying you're in favor of a castle law.
Yeah, for sure. Why not? Like, I love Doug Ford and the way he speaks. I think it's brave of him and good on him. And he's tired and, going to try and do his best to get some things changed. Like, when he said to get the guy's name and number and, do a fundraiser to raise some money for the lawyer fees. Like it's, I know he's not a lot of people like Doug Ford, but you got to love him for being the bully in the playground. You know what I mean? To maybe get things done.
All right, Gary. Appreciate the call.
Thanks, Mike.
All
Take
right,
care.
you too. Enjoy the day. Listen, if it's one thing that Doug Ford does, it's speak from the hip and or the heart. Bob, good afternoon.
Hey, Mike.
Hi, Bob.
I have a question for you.
Yes, sir.
That guy who did the girl
who just got released yesterday. I can't think of his name. He blew up his wife, blew up his house and killed his wife.
Udo Hahn. We talked about him yesterday. Yes, he was found guilty, but not criminally responsible for the murder of his wife. Now he's at a forensic hospital in the London area and was able to go speed dating while under supervision of the hospital.
Yeah, what I was going to say, you may not like this, but is that any different than people in the States, or maybe even up here, I don't know if it happens, who date people who are in jail, sometimes on murder and death row?
Well, of course it's different because the person's still in jail and the person doing the dating knows they're in jail.
But they get out in the States too, and then they try to live together.
Well, okay, if you get out and your sentence is over.
And he was out because they thought he was cured, right?
Well, he was still under supervision of the psychiatric hospital. How is speed dating a good idea?
It's not a good idea, no, but I mean, hey, you can't help stupid.
Yeah, well, how many times have we said that, Bob? We'll take a break, come back with more of your calls on the idea of a castle law. Legally allowed to use force, maybe even deadly, to protect your property if someone intrudes. This is the Mike Farwell Show. Talkback continues, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Ontario Premier Doug Ford says we need a castle law, like in the United States, where you can protect your property using force, even potentially deadly, under the law. Let's go back to the phones. Paul, what do you think?
How you doing?
Good. What do you think?
Okay, I got to tell you a little story.
Paul, phone lines are jammed.
This happened a long time ago, like back in the 80s. There was a street in sort of on the outskirts of a major city. Every day, the superintendent used to have to go around and sweep up the glass in the parking lot and on the street because of people breaking into vehicles along there. Then one day, there's a vehicle parked there, and apparently there was a monitored alarm system on it that went off with a pager at 4 o'clock in the morning. So the guy goes out the balcony and looks, and there's somebody breaking into his vehicle. And he thinks, well, you know, he got ripped off before. He's not going to let it happen again. So he grabs an old rifle, and he walks out in the balcony. He puts a bead on the guy. And he had second thoughts on that. So he whistled, and the guy looked up, and he put a shot over the guy's head. Into a safe area, there's a wide open field in behind him. The guy starts running. He's got a flashlight in his hand. The guy knows exactly where he is, so he puts another shot into the ground behind him. For the next 6 months, there wasn't a single vehicle broken into. Not advocating for vigilante justice, but one of these days, somebody's going to get fed up, and they're going to take out some of these criminals, because that's what they are, and then people are going to start thinking twice.
All right, Paul, appreciate the story and keeping it relatively brief. I think what Paul is saying is that it's an effective deterrent. Fred, good afternoon. I don't think Fred's there. I'm hearing nothing on Fred's line, so we'll go to Robert next. Hello, Robert.
Oh, hey there. This kind of pushes my button, so I had to call in. But the differences between Canada and the U.S., about the only one that I'm actually jealous of is the Castle Doctrine. I think we should have the right to protect ourselves and our property. Not necessarily with firearms, but that is an equalizer. If you're an older person, like I've heard of stories where like elderly grandmothers had defended their house with a firearm because that's an equalizer in force if many intruders are breaking into your house. Now, this happens more in the U.S. than in Canada, but still. But specifically, the incident that really, the thing that Doug Ford said that really got me was when he said it feels like a lawless society. But maybe 6 months ago, my truck was robbed in my driveway. My work tools were stolen out of it, thousands of dollars. So the next day, I figured it was probably people on drugs looking for drug money. I go down to the pawn shop in downtown Cambridge. I'm going in there to see if any of my truck stuff was there. And in front, while I'm waiting for the store to open, in the little hovel, like entryway before the store, there's like 3 guys smoking crack. And I was like, where do I live? Like, what is this place? Like, this is not, it just feels crazy.
like police can't solve all these problems. They can arrest people, but they don't stay in jail.
So I got to get to the news center for an update here, Robert. So you're saying yes to the castle doctrine. You want one here?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you for the call. And I'm going to just make the assumption here, or the leap, that encountering the people doing drugs in the entryway to the store makes Robert feel as though it's a lawless society. Your thoughts as we continue on Talkback on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Ontario Premier Doug Ford says he is going to take the issue of bail reform straight to the doorstep of Prime Minister Mark Carney. He also says he feels as though we're living in a lawless society after his car was almost stolen. And he believes, following the case of a man near Toronto who shot his rifle into the air to scare off people who were thugs, in the words of the premier, who were trying to steal his car. And of course, the man who discharged the firearm in city limits is now the one facing charges. In response to that, Doug Ford says we need a castle law here in Canada like we have in the States, where protecting your property and your family members, even with the use of potentially deadly force, is allowed under the law. That's the question we're asking you during Talkback today. Zafari, good afternoon.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
Good, thank you.
Mike, when things happen to you or to me, then we feel other people pain, right? So now somebody tried to steal that Ford car. Now we feel the pain of others. I am 1,000% agree with him, man. It should be like this, man. Somebody come to your home. If you're looking for a problem, you should face problem. I 100% I agree with that law. 100%.
All right, Zafari, thank you very much for the call. Let's go next to Terry. Hey, Terry.
Hey, good afternoon, Mike. Hopefully I don't get, you lose me here on a much better area, I think. Grant's story yesterday was interesting. I guess when the hairy-chested man showed up at the door, I guess dinner and the movie was out of the question. Mike, I've been on a date or two over my life, and usually you meet someone, if you meet them online, usually you go to a neutral public place. That's probably the best place to head for the hills if things don't pan out. But going back to this castle law, Mike, yes, I think we should have this law, definitely. If you want to break into someone's home or their property, it should be anything goes. And when Stephen Harper was in power, he would have been the perfect individual to introduce this law, and he never did. So I don't know who's going to bring it in, what future government intends on bringing it in, but I definitely think this is a law that should have been in years ago. Thanks, Mike.
All right, Terry, appreciate that call. Let's go next to Bob. Bob, good afternoon.
Hello, Mike. How are you?
Good, thank you. And you?
Not too bad. Hey, on that YouTube, do you watch it at all?
Do I watch YouTube at all?
Yeah.
Once in a while.
There's a whole bunch of stuff on there about Trump. They showed the verdicts that were done in 2024. He got nailed on 34 counts, charged. Now, he's a felon, right? How is he getting across the border coming into Canada?
Diplomatic immunity, Bob.
Is that right?
Yes, sir.
That's not right. you know. But he didn't stay very long because he knew he'd probably get kicked out anyways. But
All right, Bob. I appreciate the call. He did leave the G7 early. Donald Trump did. Trying to just stay focused on the idea of the castle law here for the time being, because Ontario Premier Doug Ford brought it up yesterday. We'll hear what Brenda has to say. Hi, Brenda.
Hello, how are you doing?
Good, thank you.
Yes, I agree with Doug Ford and for everything that he said, and I do agree with the castle law because, in my opinion, you do have the right to, if these thugs are coming in with guns, in my opinion, I would shoot their kneecaps out. They won't be coming back to my house.
Is your shot that good, Brenda, that you could just get the kneecaps?
Well, I wouldn't want to kill them.
Okay.
But teach them a lesson.
What if they didn't have guns? You said if these thugs are coming in with guns, what if they don't have guns?
Well, and most of these reports that I've been hearing on CP24 in Toronto, they are brandishing guns, and they have them on the cameras of the houses of the people that they're coming into their houses. So they have shown them with welding guns. So these thugs that are home invasions, doing these multiple home invasions.
Right. Okay, Brenda. Well, I appreciate that call. So Brenda doesn't want to shoot to kill, but she will shoot to wound. It was Ontario Premier Doug Ford that was the spark for the conversation today, because he was responding to a story that happened in the Toronto area.
Did you hear about the guy that these thugs came up, ready to steal his car? They're all in their masks and everything. So I guess he was a hunter or something. He shot up in the air. I don't recommend that, by the way. But he gets charged. I got to find out this guy's name and number, and I'm going to hold a fundraiser for lawyer fees for him. He should get a medal for standing up. It's like down in the U.S., we should have the castle law. Someone breaks into your house, and I know any of these people here, someone breaks into your house, and they're coming after your kids, and you're coming after your spouse, you're going to fight like you've never fought before. You're going to use anything that you have, be it weapons, baseball bats, knives. You're protecting your family. These thugs shouldn't be coming in there.
These thugs shouldn't be coming in there. We need a castle law like they have in the States. Tom, what do you think?
I think that the Leafs could have won the cup because we played better than Edmonton. If we would have won the third game that was in overtime.
You know what, Tom? I think if ifs and buts were candies and nuts, we'd all have a very Merry Christmas.
No, I know.
Okay,
the other thing I was going to ask you, why didn't we get Marchand?
Okay. I love it. I just played the clip from the Premier saying that we need a castle law here in Canada, like in the United States. What do you think, Tom? I think the Leafs could have won the cup. Got nothing to do with the castle law, but you know what? I'm here for winning the Stanley Cup as a Leafs fan. I promise you that. We'll take more calls, likely on the castle law, as we continue Talkback on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Does Canada need a castle law like the United States has? Intruder on your property, you use force, even potentially deadly force, legally under the law. 519-570-2545. Star 570, 1-800-570-5715. Chris, good afternoon.
Yes, I agree with that law. Number one. Number two, you got to bring back your intro song, Working Man. You have to. Mike, please.
Wow, Chris, you sound passionate about this.
Yeah, that's the other music you're playing, not bad, but does not beat Working Man.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you very much. I miss it, too. I really do. Thanks for that, Chris. Made me feel good today. Curtis, good afternoon.
Afternoon, Mike. And I'm going to keep this simple. Absolutely, we need that law. And I hope Doug Ford keeps his word that he's going to go talk to the Prime Minister about this. The other point of this is, okay, it happened to Doug. It's been happening to people for years and years and years. And no politician ever got up in arms or that fired up about it until it happens to them. Welcome to the world.
Curtis, I appreciate that call. And I hear where you're coming from. And, oh gosh, was it Zafari that said that earlier? I think. Forgive me for forgetting the name. We've had a lot of calls on this, but I thought the same thing too. And I'm not sure that, well, it could be because it was all in the same tangent from the same media conference. The story about Doug Ford's car, an attempted theft of it, and then this idea of the castle law. Until it happens to you, I'm not sure that you can fully understand it. As Curtis said, this is happening to many people. We've got 9 break-ins, albeit not vehicles stolen, but vehicles broken into on 9 occasions in the past few weeks in Waterloo. Fred, good afternoon.
How you doing, Mike?
Good, thank you.
Good. I completely agree with the castle law. Someone comes into your house unwanted, looking to hurt someone or steal something of yours, you should be able to defend it. That's the way I think. I've always thought that.
All right, Fred, I appreciate the call. And it sounds like many feel similarly. I think it's been unanimous so far on the show this afternoon. We heard from Paul from Preston earlier. Now Preston Paul, not to be confused with Paul from Preston, is with us. Preston Paul, good afternoon, my friend.
Good afternoon, Mike. How you doing?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Good. You just took the words out of my mouth. I'm sitting here listening all hour. Not one person said that this is not a good idea.
Yep.
Everybody should be able to defend their property, their family, their friends, whatever. You step on somebody's property, you are looking for trouble.
And you are going to be the person that is ready to give them that trouble.
I do. I have a big Bertha right up against my bed, and she's 34 ounces heavy, and she can still hit doubles and triples.
Attaboy, Paul. All right, thanks for the call, buddy.
You have a good day.
You too. Appreciate you. So, I've been thinking about this in a larger context too, because there have been an increasing number of stories lately, and maybe we're looking for them. Maybe it's just the people that I'm listening to. I'm not sure, but around criminal behavior and the seemingly lax response to it, right? Jail and bail, right? You arrest them in the morning and they're back out on bail in the afternoon. And you heard Premier Doug Ford say bail reform needs to happen. Mark Carney, the Prime Minister, has said bail reform is something that he's interested in. But there have been a lot of these stories. And I've been thinking about this quite a bit because I'm a big believer, I really am, in going after the root causes. And so when we hear about break-ins to vehicles, for example, I just referenced those a moment ago, 9 over the course of 3 weeks in Waterloo. Police continue to investigate. Keep your vehicles locked. Keep them in a place that's not hidden into a corner of a parking garage, that sort of thing if you can, et cetera, et cetera. But these break-ins likely happen because somebody is looking for a little cash or a little something they can take away and use because they're that desperate for money and or to use that money to turn into a drug deal, et cetera. Because so when we criminalize this behavior, we talk about criminalizing poverty or criminalizing addiction. And we do have to get to these root causes. I believe that firmly. But until we do, I think sometimes what we've overlooked is that there are people being victimized on the other end of that today. And so I hope that, do we need to do a 1-for-1 every time we make an arrest, and whatever it costs us to run somebody through that system, we have to make a similar investment in a program that should get to the root causes? Because I think what feels like is happening is there is not enough of a consequence, if any, for the behavior today. There are real people being victimized. We had our car broken into years ago. It wasn't much. It was just some stuff taken out of the vehicle. But the feeling of intrusion on one's personal property and personal space was incredibly disruptive. And that was a minor thing. Think of people that lose more, heaven forbid, get injured, you name it. They're being victimized today. And I'm not sure we think about that enough when we talk about, well, but this was the reason for the criminal behavior. I still think there has to be a consequence today. And I know that's not universally popular anymore, but I think this really is a situation where until it happens to you, it's very difficult to understand the feeling of that victim. And boy, oh boy, I think we got to make sure that we're paying attention to that. We continue Talkback on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. It started with a question from George, which followed a statement from Ontario Premier Doug Ford. Premier Ford yesterday said, we need in this country a castle law, the likes of which exists in the United States. Basically, if there is an intruder in your home, you can, under the law, use force, even potentially deadly force, to thwart that intruder. And George asked, as we started the Talkback Hour today, how much force can I use? That same question was asked of our regional police chief, Mark Crowell, when he was last here for Ask the Chief. And I've managed, just in the nick of time before our time together today is up, to go back and find the audio of that and the answer provided, which was, first thing on your mind should be call 911 if able. And remember that nothing that the intruder would potentially steal, be it jewelry, a vehicle, whatnot have you, is as valuable as a life. So, in other words, don't put yourself in harm's way. But nothing direct to the idea of what, under our laws, you are able to do in terms of protection. Not a whole lot, I don't believe. There would likely be a charge. If that stands up to a conviction, that would depend. But we're talking about the Castle Law here today on Talkback because the Premier mentioned it yesterday. And would you like to see such a law in place here in Canada? Greg, you're on Talkback. Good afternoon.
Hi, Mike. Yeah, I definitely agree with everybody else about that. Yeah, for sure. And actually, that's what I was going to ask. How is it written as to what can you do right now? And so what are you supposed to, like, smash the door? Okay, hang on. Just sit on the couch, watch them till they're done? Or just start taking shots in the face? And, like, that's the craziest thing. Like, I'd like to see how is it written as to what is acceptable. But apparently it's a gray area or nothing there. But so, no, I can't see anybody, like, worrying about whether it's legal or not. In the heat of the moment, they're going to do whatever, and then it would be a sad day then if all of a sudden, the victim, got the worst end of the lawsuit. But definitely something should be in place, and more. And that's just the first step of all the reform that's needed. The bail and everything else. And Doug Ford, if he can, put the action to these words, I'm in.
All right, Greg, I appreciate the call. And those words would be, I'm taking this straight to the doorstep of the Prime Minister. We're going to talk to him about bail reform. It's very important to Ontario's Premier, who had a very entertaining end to a media conference yesterday, telling the story about his vehicle almost being stolen, talking about those people who were arrested in connection to the large drug seizure in Peel Region, being released on bail days later. 8 out of the 9 suspects arrested. And then the story of the man, I believe he was in Vaughan, but somewhere in the Toronto area, who fired a shot into the air when people were trying to steal his car down below. And the person who fired the shot found himself charged after that, as you might expect. All right, I've got to move you along to Rob Snow. And now you know, right after this update from the 570 News Center, looking ahead, at our show tomorrow, we're going to hopefully be talking about this idea of jail, not bail, a little bit further, and a mother-daughter legal duo passing the bar on the same day. That's coming up on tomorrow's show. My name is Mike Farwell.